Amoco, Pepsi, the Furniture Center, Thomasville Gallery, and WAFF 48.
Okay. Once upon a time.
Once upon a time. Those can be some of the most memorable words of any childhood.
They mean that something wonderful is about to begin. A story. I'm Meredith Baxter Birney.
And I'm David Birney. Fortunately, many children are introduced to the pleasures and power of reading by their parents. But millions of other children are missing the joys and knowledge that reading brings, some because their parents can't read, and others because the parents are able to read, but simply don't take the time.
Reading is the single most important skill our children need to learn. The quality of their lives depends on it. Not being able to read is a debilitating handicap, and it's a handicap that can, in most cases, be avoided. What it takes is your time and your commitment.
When you invest time reading with your children, you're helping them establish a reading habit that will pay dividends for the next 60 to 70 years. A chance for a better education, a better income, a richer life. Now, experts tell us that reading to your children for 15 minutes a day, now listen to this, just 15 minutes can make the difference between whether or not your child will become a reader.
As parents of 5 children from 1.5 to 19 years old, we know that reading to them when they're small does influence their future reading ability. Our older children are avid, interested readers, and the younger ones believe that books and fun are the same thing.
And during the next hour, we're going to give you some information, some ideas that we hope will motivate your children, no matter what their ages, to drop everything and read, at least once a day. It will make a difference in your children's future.
We asked several well-known people to share their thoughts about reading and books, and we think that what they had to say is extremely important.
Books can take you places that you may never get, or they may turn you on to places that you will eventually get. Also, you could be limited within your own financial, or maybe your parents aren't even as bright as your potential. Maybe you don't even have 2 parents. Maybe you don't have any parents. The possibilities of what your life can be expanded to infinity through what you're able to take out of books. In other words, you're not born limited if you can just get access to books.
And I think that's the most important thing, that books be around the house and around the child all the time, from the time he's born, so that he's always looking at books. A kid is curious, and he'll pick up the books by himself. What's bad is if a kid goes to school at the age of 5 or 6 and sees a book for the first time.
There's just so much knowledge that we all are seeking and trying to gain, and the only way we can do this is by sitting down, picking up something, and understanding through reading. It's the greatest vehicle that we have today, and it's such an easy thing to get into.
Any youngster that thinks that he can get through life just on athletics is making a big mistake. What the parents should tell them is very simply is that athletics is simply a stepping stone to where you want to get in life. But when you get there, you're going to have to deal with it like everybody else does, and you're going to have the foundation through a good, solid education, which is based on, the fundamentals of reading, writing, and math.
We are in danger of losing the written word, and that's a real tragedy as far as I'm concerned. People say literature in the future will be on cassette, and things like that. That's really scary to me. I think that the language and the poetry, the prose inherent in reading, that visual experience, is something not to be missed.
The human suffering that comes from not being able to read is so enormous. I can hardly envision it. How really cut out you are. It's like being totally deaf or blind if you can't read. Just miss so much. And as I say, the fun of it, you and I talked about that first, the fun of it, you just never experience.
Coming up, a child's greatest motivators.
play roles of immeasurable importance in laying the foundation for learning to read. This is one of the conclusions reached in Becoming a Nation of Readers, a report from the Commission on Reading. They go on to say that by reading aloud, discussing stories and events, encouraging children to learn letters and words, and teaching them about the world around us, we can help prepare our children for success in reading. Now, Dan McCloskey is a parent who is doing these things. He wants his daughters to have a stronger start and a stronger finish than he did.
Ninth grade is when I was probably at my peak of my athletic ability in track. I was winning a lot of competitions. I was the fastest kid in the school for the 100-yard dash.
Dan McCloskey often looks back at his days in the limelight as a track star. But now, as a laid-off construction worker and the father of 4 little girls, Dan wishes his high school days had been spent on a different track.
I can remember reading nothing when I was growing up. I wasn't pressured into reading. I wasn't asked to read. I went out for the sport, and I also noticed in the sport that the teachers changed towards me too because I was an exceptional athlete. I really didn't foresee anything. I just thought that I was going to have a party the rest of my life.
But Dan found out differently. He found out that limited reading skills mean limited job opportunities.
I do not consider myself lucky being a construction worker, but without the education to take me into some other field, that is what I have to do. Not what I want to do, what I have to do. I don't want my daughters to have to do something. I want them to have the choice, and I want to make it better for them. And if it takes the extra time that I have to put in to read, whatever it takes, that's the important thing to me. I'm giving my kids what I feel that I didn't get when I was younger. Now, is that AM or PM? Right.
Dan and his wife, Deborah, are determined that their daughters, Erica, Danielle, Hannah, and Becky, will not grow up having the same regrets as their dad. Reading to the girls at home and teaching them a love for reading and books has become a top priority and a satisfying way to spend time together.
You can go by a bumble boat or jet. I don't care how you go, just get. Well, I get satisfaction of the look on my kids' faces when I'm reading a book for the first time. You're bringing that book to life is what you're doing.
I see that they are learning when they're reading, and they're finding out that learning is fun, which is going to help them in their schoolwork, which is going to help them in their future.
There we go. Now we can make some bands here.
For Dan and Deborah, commitment to their children's education extends even outside their home. They both volunteer at the Head Start Center, where daughter Hannah is a student, and where Dan gets plenty of practice reading aloud to a different audience.
It would be nice to play with you, said a voice. Can you, said Danny. I guess, what's that look like to you? Looks like a dinosaur to me, too. They're practically able to read when they're in kindergarten today because of these programs, and I wish that I had that when I was in kindergarten and further on, through my education, because I'd be a little smarter than I am today.
Dan McCloskey may have learned too late that reading, not running, was where he needed to succeed. And that's why he and Deborah are devoted to starting their daughters on the right track with reading.
That's the goal I have for my life, is because my kids are my life. There's nothing else that matters to me.
Dan's daughters are fortunate. Their parents recognize the value of reading. It's unfortunate that as a youngster, Dan wasn't motivated by a teacher like Marva Collins. In 1975, Marva Collins left the Chicago public school system to begin West Side Prep, where she could teach the way she wanted to. She located her school in the same ghetto neighborhood where she lives and raises her own family. She understands the needs of the children of her neighborhood and wants to prove to them that where you're from doesn't have to limit who you can become. Every school day at Westside Prep begins with a creed of expectations and inspiration written especially for the students by founder Marva Collins.
And that is what I must do. Pursue happiness.
We are what we are taught. It's what I've always taught my own children, is to be self-confident, to believe in themselves. I grew up with the attitude from a dad who told me from, I guess, maybe when I was born, for as long as I can remember, that you are the brightest child in the whole world, or you're the prettiest child in the whole world, or you're great. And I heard that from him so much, even if I was being reprimanded for something.
It's that message that Marva and her staff instill in their students, many of whom arrive at Westside Prep with low self-esteem and low academic achievement, especially in reading. Stacy Leitner, now in her second year, was one of those students.
And I mean, when I came here, I was at the 5th grade level, and now I'm at the 12th grade level in reading. And reading is, I guess, the most important thing. I've learned so much here. They care a lot. You know, it's not like they shove you off and put you in a learning disabled center. They care a lot.
Marva believes caring means that each child learns to read. So every class, every day, reviews the phonics rules, the building blocks of reading. The children learn the rules through enthusiastic verbal responses, chants, and vocabulary examples.
What does the positive mean? The blunder.
While Marva spends time in every classroom, she teaches a special class to 4th, 5th, and 6th graders called Prepping for Power. Here, her emphasis is on critical thinking skills, and writing an original composition is a daily requirement.
Cut the box, and the devil jumped out with a pitchfork singing "Born in the USA."
Together, the class reads novels considered classics. Today, the book is Lord of the Flies, a selection usually not assigned until high school.
Obey the punctuation mark.
Like a girl.
That's an exclamation point. Like a girl? Come on.
Like a girl. No.
I think the classics, first of all, makes the mind very keen, or incisive. It makes the mind very analytical. It makes one think.
Marva Collins teaches that readers are leaders. To that end, she has dedicated her energies to be sure that these children have that possibility open to them. She does it by teaching them skills and attitudes that will last a lifetime.
I've learned how to be proud of myself and what I do, and to be proud of whatever I think. The most important thing I learned here is to never say I can't.
When I grew up, I would like to be a teacher, and I would like to share with my children what Mrs. Collins taught me.
In a minute, yes, those scribbles are readable.
According to this report, reading out loud to your preschool child is the single most important activity you can do to help prepare him or her for eventual success in reading. As you turn the pages together, study the pictures carefully and try to read with enthusiasm and excitement. Your child learns not only about the content of the book, but also from you that reading can be important and fun. Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood understands preschool children very well. He knows that a child who reads a book with someone he or she loves is also enjoying an emotional experience, a kind of sharing, a closeness.
Well, sure, you know how it is to be close to somebody and feel, you can almost feel what somebody else is feeling. And if the person who is holding you and reading to you loves what's being read, well, then you're going to have that kind of feeling yourself. You're going to be able to sense the love of that book. I know parents who have said to me, you know, my parents read this very same book to me that I'm reading to my child. Can you imagine what that feels like? And it's another way of passing on family tradition.
Carol and Dick Nathan enjoy activities that include Sarah, 5 1/2, and Molly, almost 2, especially when they all can have fun. Wendra Liang, almost 3, speaks Chinese at home with her parents Helen and Gladstone, but a couple of times a week she gets to use English, her second language. Where does all this happen for the Liangs and the Nathans? At a lapsit at the San Francisco Public Library.
Daddy over the water, daddy over the sea, daddy cracks the blackbird.
So, just what is a lapsit? It's a free event, it's a happening, and it's especially for infants and toddlers and their parents. It's held in the evenings and on Saturdays so families can attend together. And it's filled with lively songs, delightful stories, finger plays, and lap jogs. Children's librarian John Philbrook uses his own childhood experiences for inspiration in planning his lap sits.
A lot of things that our grandmothers, at least my grandmothers, did with me when I was small, I do with them. I try to make the program very interesting for not only the children but the parents, because unlike the other types of story times, the parents are an integral part of this program because the children sit on the parents' laps very often.
Our next book is a little book, so you got to look real carefully. It's called Noisy Nora, so you may know some of the lines.
You'll have a very good first experience of books with something enjoyable, something you want to do, something you reach for.
Wendra's parents have found lots of benefits for her during a lap sit.
Intellectually speaking, she is exposed to a lot of the books that we would never be possible. It would never be possible for us to provide her financially. I mean, it's just impossible. And secondly, socially, it provides a very good socialization for her with the other children. I think she's very lucky, and so I said to myself, if she has such fun, I might as well have it too. And I really do have fun.
Carol and Dick Nathan agree that a lap sit is something quite special.
When you're alone with your child reading, it's a whole other dimension than when you're with other kids and other adults. It's really fun to see that, and you kind of build a sense of community too. Books open up so much to them, and I think that the library has become a very comfortable place.
And that's the story of a little gorilla.
One of the benefits of a lap sit is what the families take home. Plenty of books and activity ideas, and plenty of encouragement for reading together.
Big boa constrictor loves little gorillas.
You know, some of our favorite times of day are when we read to our 19-month-old twins. The physical closeness that sharing a book gives us and them is worth as much as the content. Kids love individualized attention and being held, and when we read to them, they get both.
We're also building a habit that will eventually lead to a more productive life. We hope our children are getting a head start. You know, they're expanding their vocabulary and beginning to understand that letters form words and that words have meaning. At the same time, we're having fun because they respond so enthusiastically to the words and pictures.
But you also know what's coming, right? The request again and again for the same book. When our 11-year-old was very much younger, she'd always ask for Dr. Seuss books. So often, finally, I thought I'd absolutely go crazy. I still know some of the words by heart. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam. I am.
You know, while those repeated requests do drive you slightly nuts, there's some very good reasons for your child saying,
read it again, Mom.
Read it again, Dad.
Children ask for stories to be read again and again because they like the stories. They get a lot of closeness to their parents at the same time that they're getting a lot of information from the stories. The stories often carry emotional content that's important for young children. Another important thing that they get from asking stories to be read over and over again is that they begin to internalize stories and what stories mean in terms of written language.
Dr. Elizabeth Salisbury, Associate Professor of Education at the University of Michigan, and the mother of a 4-year-old daughter, studies reading and writing development in young children.
Okay. One of the things that we've learned is that very early on, the children begin to make a difference between the marks that they use as writing and the marks that they use as drawing. In fact, some researchers have found that if you watch a child, you'll soon see that they have their own particular signature that they use over and over again. If the child's first name, for example, starts with a letter that has lines to it and angles, that the scribble for the writing will be angular. If their first name starts, say, with a C, like Karen or Carol with a C, then you'll find that that signature may be the circular kind of scribble. Whichever form of scribble the child uses for their signature, they tend to use just the opposite kind of scribble to do their drawing. Writing goes hand in hand with reading development because what children are doing when they write is composing. They're using written language and then they read it back. With many children, we often see them using scribbling and actually composing while they're scribbling. Then you'll ask them to reread and they go right back to that scribble and they read a story back to the scribble.
The dragon.
Ever after. Oh. The first thing parents can do to encourage the children's writing and reading is simply to read and write around them themselves because the children love to act like mommy and daddy and carry a briefcase or have a grocery list or have forms to fill out. The next thing that parents can do is respond whenever the children pick up the pencil or the paper or the storybook and treat what they're doing as real reading and writing. If your child picks up a storybook and starts to babble to it at 18 months, say, fine, oh wow, you're reading a book. Read to me. Invite your child to read. If the child picks up a pencil and writes, say, hey, what you writing? Come on, let's do this together. You write Grandma while I write Grandma. Let's do our grocery list together. How about leaving a note for Daddy? So simply having literacy materials around, treating them meaningfully, and including your child in the reading and writing activities are the best things that parents can do to encourage their children's literacy development.
This is the best bulletin board in the house. By displaying your children's writings and drawings on the refrigerator, you're saying to them, these are important. Now, if your kitchen's like our kitchen, it's often a family gathering place. That makes it the perfect place for some books. Just be sure the books are placed somewhere low enough so the kids can reach them easily. It'll save you some steps, and they'll be handy for sharing during meal or snack time. Now, we put some books in our children's cribs for them to read before and after their naps. Now, while holding a book is special, owning that book gives it extra importance.
Take me back. Take me back. Take me back.
For these second graders, it's a very special day at the Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania Library. A day filled with entertainment.
Bang, a bang, a bang, went the banjo string.
Stories.
Hello, Granny, how you doing?
And best of all, books. Today is Riff Day, a distribution of free books through the nationwide Reading is Fundamental program. Each child chooses a brand new book to take home and to keep. The Riff philosophy is that if children are given the opportunity to choose and keep books of interest to them, that they're on their way to becoming readers. But making a selection is no easy task. Faced with all those colorful covers and enticing titles, sometimes the only way for a kid to decide is good old eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Parent volunteer Lorraine Heidekat is an enthusiastic supporter of the RIF program.
And the selection of RIF books is terrific. There's absolutely something for everybody. And if these kids can get used to liking books at an early age, they'll grow up liking them.
I picked it. I didn't have to buy it. It was free to me.
Book ownership, experts say, is a key factor in the development of the child as a reader. Mrs. George Bush is a board member of Reading is Fundamental and has seen firsthand how the RIF program can motivate children.
And sometimes the children will pick up the books that you think they couldn't possibly read. But it's what they really want to read. And if they want to read, they'll learn to read, of course. It teaches the value of a book to these children.
Through the RIF program, these kids are discovering how much fun reading can be. And they're learning the special joys of having a book of their very own.
Next, kids who have gone bananas over books. We've called this program Drop Everything and Read because that's what all of us need to do with our kids at least once a day, including our elementary and teenage kids, especially when research shows that just 15 minutes a day can make such a major difference in their reading ability and interest.
I know what you're probably thinking. Between all the things you have to do and all the kids' schedules, where are you going to find even 15 minutes? Well, it does take some work, and it may take some schedule rearranging. But when you care about your children, you'll find the time.
I think the most obvious time for reading for pleasure is just before bedtime. Or you could try what one mother did. Her kids were slow to wake up in the morning, so she went in with milk and a book, and she read to them while they got a head start on breakfast.
Encouraging our kids to read for fun is especially important when they're learning to read themselves. It takes plenty of time and plenty of practice to read well. And with so many things competing for our kids' attention these days, it can be a real challenge motivating them to even choose to read.
And that's where books of choice and even bananas come in.
Looking around Powell Elementary School in North Baltimore, Ohio, you soon realize that bananas and monkeys have special meaning here. And it's not monkey business. It's
reading books. Mr. Og wearing the best. I see Mr. Og in a monkey suit with his humongous banana in his hand. Books.
Second-year principal Gary Ogg and his teaching staff have challenged their students this year to go bananas over books after parents expressed deep concern that their children weren't interested in reading.
I know that you have been going bananas over books. I don't know. Have you been going bananas over books?
All year, the kids have been proving in 4 different ways that they're bananas over books. For today's reading auction, the points to buy the special items could only be earned by reading books. 1 point for every 50 pages.
The more that you read, obviously, the more points you have and the more power that gives you. And I think the translation there is reading is power.
He sold it. Sold it! Sold it. $60. You got her bought, partner. That's the way to do business.
Books figure in 2 ways for the readathon part of Bananas Over Books.
One of the things that we are building, we have not had in the past, is a library. A library is the heart of any elementary school, and in many respects, I think we've been without that heart. It was a way I saw of raising funds to buy books for the library and at the same time motivate kids to read more.
You have a lot of fudges here. How'd you get these?
I walked down the street and $9.
This person said that they paid 10 cents for each book. How many books have you read?
14.
I know, 14.
We've collected for the first half of the school year over $1,000.
Pizza is the prize in the nationwide Pizza Hut Book It program. Many of the boys and girls at Powell Elementary have earned free pizzas by reaching and exceeding the monthly reading goal set by each teacher.
14? That's a whole lot more than 5.
Got 5 for your pizza.
I think they're learning that they extend some effort, that there's some reward there.
Banana. Just pick it as you want.
Finally, there is the kids' favorite part of Bananas Over Books, the bet.
I challenged them to read 9,000 books by the end of the school year. I challenged them in an assembly that they could not do it, that I knew they were not interested in books. They did it halfway through the school year. So at the end of the first semester, I had to show up wearing a monkey suit for the entire day, and I topped it off with driving a banana car. I challenged them to read another 9,000 books by the end of the school year, and I would make the largest banana split that the town has ever seen. They're now more than halfway to that goal. These are obviously bets I want to lose. But I've got a tough question I want to ask you. What happened if I decided not to have any bets? What would happen if we decided not to have any auction? What do you think would happen if we decided not to have any pieces? Do you think we'd just give up reading?
No.
You don't think you'd give up?
Mm-mm.
Why not?
Because I enjoy reading.
At Garden Hills Elementary in Champaign, Illinois, Principal Phyllis Wilkin and her staff have focused the curriculum spotlight on reading, and the students have responded with improved reading scores and a big increase in reading for fun.
Next word, get ready.
World.
Ready?
There is, of course, direct reading instruction where the boys and girls learn how to read and how to understand what they read.
Get ready.
But there are also cozy places to go with a good book. You can climb aboard the reading train or nestle in a reading bathtub. And there are volunteers from the community who serve as reading partners. There's nothing quite like a private audience to help you read your best. Even the physical education teacher, Mary Kennedy, encourages reading. She sponsors the Rita Reader Award for reading articles about sports.
What books have you guys read that you really like?
But perhaps what the children enjoy most is belonging to the family reading club.
Button maker. Anyone could see that it would.
Mamie and Willie Houston and their sons, Warren, Farron, and Lewis, are active members of the family reading club.
Reading, I think, is very important to any child because, if they can't read, then they can't. There's not very much hope for the child, and that's why I encourage my boys a lot to read, and most of all to understand what they read. Danny did, okay? All right.
At the end of each meeting of the family reading club, Mamie records the number of minutes they've read on the official tracking sheet. In the Beerbaum household, 5th grader Tricia often reads to her mom while she's fixing dinner. Second grader John usually finds time before bed to share a story with his dad.
I can see a great improvement in the children's reading ability. I can see the books that they're reading and know what they're reading, the types of books they're interested in, what they enjoy.
Good morning, Tricia.
At school, every 250 minutes of family reading club time is recognized with a gold seal displayed in the classroom and a leaf added to a special tree in the community room.
A red leaf for you today.
During lunch, Mrs. Wilkin honors the children who have earned leaves that day. So far, she's recognized almost 7,000 hours of reading at home. Then Mr. Lindsay, the custodian, climbs up his ladder and adds the new leaves to the Garden Hills Family Reading Club tree for all proudly to see.
(12:10 p.m. at Allegheny Middle School in Pittsburgh. In Mr. Nowak's English class and throughout the school, it's time for everyone to drop everything and read. This is DEAR, Dear Time, Allegheny's name for their daily period of silent, sustained reading, when students can read material on any topic that interests them. Topics like mysteries, science, fantasy. These kids aren't reading for school. They're reading for fun. And getting students to want to read is what Dear Time is all about. Mr. John Rolls, language arts teacher, feels that a top motivator for students is that they select their own materials to read. It's also what makes Dear Time work.
We want people who want to read for the rest of their lives. And I think if we can give them some encouragement and let them realize that it's okay to read the things that they want to read, that we're making a step in that direction.
Robert Pipkin, Allegheny's principal, believes that if faculty members set examples by enjoying Dear Time themselves, that students will get a clear message about the importance and fun of reading. So, Mr. Pipkin often takes a book in hand and visits a class and invites these students to drop everything and listen.
It took me. It was bending over me. The monster. It was making noise.
Some parents might question why students should be encouraged to read for pleasure during valuable classroom time. Reading teacher Lamar Lee responds.
Because valuable classroom time should be put towards something valuable. And reading it is a very valuable tool to have. It is a whole life skill. I can't overemphasize the point that those that practice reading more tend to read best.
The goal here is to get these students hooked on books, so that when they're out of school and on their own, they'll take some time every day to drop everything and read.
You know, actually, bathrooms are great places to keep reading material, especially magazines. Sometimes with 5 kids, it's the only place I can find to be alone. And of course, bed is a great place to read too. You know, why not give your older kids a drop everything and read time they can count on at home? Extend lights out by half an hour and let the kids know that this time is for reading for fun only. Special interest magazines. How about a subscription to get started? As well as books of all good choices for this time. And don't forget a small reading lamp that can be adjusted and turned off without having to get out of bed. After all, the fun of reading is reading what you want to read. Drop Everything and Read Time reminds kids that not all reading is in the textbooks.
When we return, television and reading, the unexpected partners.
In our house, the television is usually turned off, not on. We're very selective about what we and our kids watch. And that's really the key to using television, not letting it use you. TV is a good place to get information like this show or a nightly newscast. TV does let us experience events firsthand. But we do need to monitor what and how much television our children watch. If what's on is not appropriate, then you turn the TV off and help your kids find something worthwhile to do, like read. But television can be exciting, motivating, entertaining, and some of it is even designed to promote reading.
Intro to book review, scene 13, shot 12A, take 1.
That should just about do it.
LeVar Burton, host of Reading Rainbow, the acclaimed public broadcasting summer reading series for kids 5 to 8 years old, is on location in California. LeVar loves to share his enthusiasm for reading with his audience because he remembers discovering in 3rd grade just how terrific a book can be.
I had to do a book review. And I don't know why, but I chose this book, Captain's Courageous by Rudyard Kipling. And I really remember it being the first time I was ever transported to another time and place, by reading. Just by sitting there reading this book, I went somewhere else. And that's when it really, clicked on that, wow, this is wild.
I'm standing about a half a mile away from that fountain.
Since the summer of 1983, LeVar has been taking his Reading Rainbow viewers on wonderful adventures that always begin with a good story, like Hill of Fire.
Farmer looked. Pablo looked. The ox turned its head. White smoke came from the hole in the ground.
Then LeVar is off in search of fascinating information related to the story, like finding out about Native American life when the show featured the book Gift of the Sacred Dog.
Maybe I'm supposed to feel proud.
At the end of each Reading Rainbow show, LeVar turns the camera and microphone over to 3 kids who review books they've read and would like to share with the kids watching the show.
I recommend this book because it talks about what the Indians believe. It has some beautiful pictures in it and beautiful poetry in it.
I guess for us, the rainbow is not just the colors, but it's the pot of gold at the end. And the pot of gold for us is these kids. We figure that if we can make a reader out of a kid who's 6, then they'll be a reader at the age of 60. That's a real skill that they'll have within their whole lives. The kids that actually watch Reading Rainbow, there is a discernible improvement in their reading and comprehension skills when they get back to school in September. It's not just entertaining, it's provocative, and that's television at its best as far as I'm concerned. We'll see you next time.
In a minute, reading aloud. It's never too late or too early. Jim Trelease is a father, a journalist, and the author of the best-selling Read Aloud Handbook, a guide for parents and teachers about how to share the pleasure of books with children.
You read aloud to children for the same reasons that you talk to them. That is, to guide them, to inspire them, to motivate them, and to educate them. But above and beyond those reasons, you read aloud to children to give them a commercial for the joys of reading. You begin reading aloud to children as soon as you begin talking to that child. If the child is old enough to talk to, the child is old enough to read to. It's the same English language. In fact, as you find it inside the covers of books, it is frequently a whole lot more organized, colorful, and coherent. And coochie, looky, mummy, mummy. And what do you begin with? What particular book, what particular story do you begin with? The first sound that all children fall in love with, that is, your child
and my child, the child in East Africa, South Africa, West Germany, East Germany, they all fall in love with one sound. It's a poem. It is the rhythmic, rhyming beat, beat, beat of a mother's heart, setting in motion a natural appetite for rhythm and rhyme for the rest of the child's life. Therefore, the first sound that a child hears in the way of a book should be poetry.
It was all laden.
And there is no better example of that than Mother Goose, the parent who either can't read or doesn't read very well. The first step toward curing that problem is the parent recognizing that reading is important. And in order to convey the importance to the child, and the parent is going to have to set aside some time each day to pay testimony to that. Go to the library and take out the books that are on cassette. There are now hundreds of these available in all public libraries. Take the book and the cassette home. Pop the cassette into the tape deck. Open the book with your child and listen to that story as somebody else, a literate, good reader, reads aloud that story to you and the child. There's a little bell that sounds on the tape telling you when to turn the page. You are neurologically bonding with your child as you're reading, but you're also telling that child, hey, I think this story is so important that I'm not going to do anything else right now except read with you. Pick your spots with the teenagers. Try not to impose the reading aloud experience on the teenager when he is in the middle of planning a basketball game with his friends outside in the backyard, or when his girlfriend is talking on the phone. When the child is doing the dishes is a wonderful time to read aloud to that child. And if your teenager doesn't do the dishes, then you are dumber than your teenager. Teenagers, I think, were made for doing the dishes, even if it's just scraping and stacking the dishes in the dishwasher. When you're doing the dishes, you can't do anything else except do the dishes and listen. If they are watching something while they are doing the dishes, like television, they are not going to do a good job scraping those dishes. Also bear in mind that with teenagers, you don't have to start Gone with the Wind. You don't need a very long story. It's important to just role model in front of that child. This is a terrific column by Mike Royko. Did you read this column by Bob Greene today? Listen to this. And you read the column from the newspaper. Magazines, newspapers are also a part of the reading experience. In this day and age, where do you find the time to read aloud to children? The interviewer asked me this. I said, you're kidding me, right? Are you suggesting to me that you don't have the same number of hours a day that I get? Because as far as I know, the only people who didn't get 24 hours yesterday died yesterday. Everyone else got 24 hours. The difference between you and me is priorities. You had the time to go to the mall yesterday. You had the time to watch your favorite ball team yesterday. You had time to talk to your sister on the phone about nothing for 30 minutes. You had time to do the dishes and to chase dust balls under the couch. You had time to play your lottery number. You had time to read the sports pages and watch the soap opera. But you didn't have time to read to your children. I had time. I can tell you unequivocally, 20 years from now, the dishes will still be in the sink. The ball team will still be playing. There'll be 3 more malls in the community. But 20 years from now, your little boy or your little girl is not going to be your little boy or your little girl anymore. They'll be 1,000 miles away, all grown up. You get one shot at it now.
As parents, we must remember that reading begins at home. As our children grow, we continually influence how much and how well they read. It doesn't take money, but it does take time and commitment on our part.
I think the best thing we can do is read aloud to our kids and with them. Now, this is especially true for preschoolers and children who find reading for themselves difficult. But the older kids get a lot out of it, too.
Be a role model. Read in your children's presence so they can see that reading is an integral part of your life.
And make quality reading materials, appropriate in content and difficulty, available in places where your kids spend time. Their bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen, near the TV set.
The public library is the greatest resource for borrowing books, but also try and provide some books that are your child's very own. A terrific book is a great birthday or holiday gift.
Paperbacks are inexpensive these days, and a small financial investment can pay off in huge dividends when your child reads because he wants to.
We hope that starting tomorrow, you'll make a point sometime during the day to take 15 minutes and sit down with your child and drop everything and read.
Thanks for joining us. Now, let's go get those babies and read a book.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
This, For Kids' Sake Special, brought to you by Food World, Amoco, Pepsi, the Furniture Center, Thomasville Gallery, and